Hey there, good people, it's your Crippled Critic. I hope you guys had a fun Halloween, and this week I'm going to talk about the obscure horror title, DreadOut. So, DreadOut is a third person survival horror game about a group of high school students who go on a field trip in Indonesia. There, they discover an old ghost town, and soon realize something weird is happening. The main character, Linda, has to use her trusty camera to fight off ghosts in order to save her and her friends. DreadOut was developed by an Indonesian team called Digital Happiness. So just a heads up, I'm probably going to mispronounce some of the creators' names, and I apologize for that, but I don't speak Indonesian or Javanese, but I will do my best. The main team who worked on DreadOut was game director Vadi Vinadi and story writer Irawan. Digital Happiness went through a lot of ups and downs during their game making process, including just trying to figure out what kind of horror game they wanted to make. They had all sorts of ideas for the gameplay, like doing a first person horror game with mostly puzzles, or a point and click horror game. They had an idea to do a third person horror game, but using more traditional weapons to attack, and I still would love to see them do a game like that. They even thought about doing a sci-fi horror, which looks pretty weird, but could be interesting in another game. Because they are one of the few game companies in Indonesia, Digital Happiness had very few funds to work with. Potential investors tried to pressure the team to make DreadOut more of a mobile game. This led them to go a more independent route and let fans help them pay and fund their project and let Digital Happiness make the game they really wanted. In the end, the team decided on a third-person horror game, the core gameplay involving fighting ghosts by using a camera to take their pictures. This was heavily inspired by the Fatal Frame series. I feel like it would be wise to explain a little bit about the Fatal Frame series, just so you'll know what I'm talking about. Fatal Frame is a Japanese survival horror series that came out around the early 2000s on the PS2. It's set in 1980s Japan, and the main characters use a camera to capture and pacify ghosts. It immediately set itself apart from other horror games of the time with its extremely unique gameplay mechanics, using a camera as a weapon. It's steeped in Japanese folklore and is all about ancient villages and weird cult sacrifices, all the cool things I like about Japanese horror, and I don't think the series gets enough attention, but another time I might go into it a little more. But for now, I'll leave it at that. Anyway, DreadOut uses a very similar game mechanic, although with a modern twist. Linda uses her smartphone to take pictures of the ghosts, and she uses it as a flashlight. Speaking of the game mechanics of this game, let me get into the controls of DreadOut. So DreadOut is available on PC, Mac, and Linux, and it has fully customizable controls. A lot of care was put into giving the players options and the ability to play the game how they want. Visual cues can just be turned off if you don't like them. Though I'm not sure all of these options were in the game immediately when the game was released, but I do know that Digital Happiness has done a really good job of listening to fan feedback and adding things that they wanted. For most of the game, you only need to press a few buttons: run, lift camera, and take picture. I was able to map certain keys so that they would have more than one function, and it didn't really confuse any of the commands, so that simplified things for me. Buttons like the menu or the inventory can be accessed by just pressing escape, so there's several workarounds you can take advantage of too. It's because of this that I think gamers with fine motor skill impairments should do fine when playing DreadOut. There are a few moments where we have to make quick movements, but they're few and far between, and they're mostly during the last half of the game. On the audio side of things, there are language options and subtitles, but no captions. The subtitles are kind of spotty too, as background sounds aren't subtitled or dialogue from certain characters, especially minor characters. I feel like to some degree this is done intentionally in order to make background dialogue from ghosts or minor characters harder to understand, so it's creepier in that way, but it's still unfortunate for deaf players. Also, this being a horror game, the soundtrack is important for building atmosphere, so although I don't think you need to hear everything in order to play the game, you probably won't have as good experience. On the plus side, the visual accessibility section of the options menu was given the most love. which is great, and you usually don't see that in a lot of games. So in the game, the main character, Linda, has supernatural senses that allow her to identify ghosts or objects. They're shown to us through visual cues called the red vignette and blue vignette. There's also something called a camera glitch that happens when you lift the camera while you're fighting a ghost, and it tells you when they have a weak point available. Most of the visual cues work fine, like the camera glitch, but to me, the red vignette and the blue vignette would have worked a lot better with like a vibration function, like on the console. The great thing is, Digital Happiness seemed to understand that colorblind players could have a hard time because of these vignettes, so they give you the option of turning it off completely, and then just making it gray instead. So gamers with visual impairments should have an easy time. While I'm at it, I want to mention that there's a pretty thorough tutorial you can look through on the options menu called How to Play. Things like enemy types and how certain gameplay mechanics work are shown in detail, so if you're having any trouble understanding it, check it out for sure. Like I said, the gameplay is pretty straightforward. You use the camera to take pictures of enemies to pacify or kill them. How many pictures you have to take really depends on the ghost type, and some of them have a weak point, but most of the time all you have to do is get the ghost in the right frame and it'll do the trick. Linda isn't super strong though, and 2 or 3 hits from any enemy will take her out. If Linda does end up dying, DreadOut has kind of a unique death screen that awaits you. You wake up in a black abyss surrounded by candles, and you have to run towards the light in order to get back to the land of the living. Every time you die, the light gets farther and farther away. You can actually shorten this distance in the game by finding certain mythical objects, or just go into the options menu and put on a fixed distance. Your choice, really. When you do come back to life, the game puts you in the exact same place you started when you died. There's an autosave feature in DreadOut, but you can also save whenever you want. If I can say one bad thing about DreadOut, it's the puzzles. They're really difficult, not straightforward at all, and it took me hours on some of them, so I don't feel bad about looking any of them up. And you shouldn't either, it just makes the game a lot easier and less tedious. Like I said, the soundtrack and atmosphere are great in this game. The music can be really quiet and creepy, and then super loud and intense, putting you on edge the whole time. So the story is not for everyone. It's got that campy Asian horror with the stilted dialogue, and it can be a bit odd for some people. I personally love when Asian horror has dialogue that gets lost in translation, because I think the whole fear of unknown just gets even more heightened because of it, but not everybody's like that. I mean, even the title, DreadOut, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It seems very English. Fans of Japanese horror will love it, though. Both halves of this game have very different tones. Both great, but I feel like the first half really does feel like a love letter to the Fatal Frame series. Also, I think players will be a little blindsided by how silly the beginning of the game is. The dialogue gets so cheesy, it's almost like it came out of Scooby-Doo.
Oh, I see. Typical girl time.
Hey guys, we're about to check out the inside. Wanna come?
Maybe later.
Okay, you're lost.
Hey, where are you guys running off to? You two, stay here, okay?
Where are
Hey,
we going
be
now?
careful.
I so need a massage.
However, the last half of DreadOut is really where it comes into its own. The tone is darker, the stakes are higher, and the enemies are way more dangerous. In the beginning, ghosts are just creepy visions that can occasionally harm you, but later they become deadly, and without going into too much spoilers, they can even harm your friends. The second half of the game also highlights some of the more uniquely Indonesian horror, which is kind of hard to explain, but I'll use the example of these weird gopher ghosts that attack you in the later half. You could never dream up these things. It's like something out of a Lewis Carroll book. So DreadOut is super creepy and fun. It's available on Steam for under $20, and I think it's worth the money. Yeah, it's got dated graphics, I'll admit, but if that doesn't bother you and you really do like Asian horror, this game will be great for you. Originally, the game was released episodically in 2 parts, but now you can play it from start to finish. There's also a third part that acts as a prequel and originally was a demo for the game. You can play it and not have to know much of the story, so go ahead if you want more DreadOut. I really love this game, and I want to see more like it. I can't wait to see what Digital Happiness has in store next. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.